Oh, Ben, just let us know when you hit record. Oh, I guess he already did. Are you guys ready? So since we've got several people and we want to talk about a lot of things, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, but just, kind of get through that kind of quickly. And most of my listeners will know who all of you are anyway. All right. Let me shut this door. Or Haley, can you shut this door real quick? Thank you so much. Are you guys ready?
Yes.
I got to figure out what I'm going to say.
Everybody but John.
No idea what I'm going to
Oh,
say.
there he is.
All right.
Hey, Craig.
All right, everybody be real quiet. So it's a beautiful Friday afternoon. It was a little cold this morning, but it's gorgeous right now. It's in October. I should be in the woods hunting, and I'm not. You should be relaxing, enjoying yourself. You're probably out appraising houses or something. I don't know. Well, this is what I did today. I watched the AQB meeting, and we could do that virtually, which is kind of cool. So I watched the AQB meeting. I've invited a few friends to hang out with me this afternoon and talk about what we witnessed. So stick around. We'll be right back. Hi, this is Brian Reynolds. You're listening to the Appraisal Update Podcast, brought to you by the fine folks of Appraiser eLearning. And you might be watching us on video because I said we're going to let the video camera roll. We don't normally do that for the podcast. But, I had some beautiful people with me today, except for John. And now, see, I have two Johns. They don't know which one I'm talking about. But, hey, gang, thanks for being here and hanging out with me for a minute. Say hi to everybody. That means hi means audio. Say hi.
Hey. Hi, everybody.
There we go. So just to let my listeners know, they all waved at the camera. Let my listeners know who's here with us today. First, we have Miss Melissa Bond. Melissa, tell everybody who you are.
Hi, Brian. I'm Melissa Bond. I'm a 28-year certified residential appraiser who loves what I do every day. Continuing education provider, and so happy to be here.
Great. Thanks for being here. Mr. John Brennan is in the house. Welcome, my friend John. Tell everybody who it is and what you do.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Glad to be here. I am the current chief appraiser with Clear Capital. I've been doing that for 6 months. Prior to that, I spent 16 and a half years at the Appraisal Foundation and 8.5 years before that as the chief of licensing and enforcement at the California Office of Real Estate Appraisers. I'm a certified general appraiser, certified use path instructor, and fellow with the Royal Institution Chartered Surveyors.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, welcome, John. Glad that you're here and could join us on about a 2-second notice.
Glad to be here.
I literally, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you, John. I literally just texted him. Seriously, what was it, like 5 minutes ago, right?
Yeah.
And said, hey, John Brennan, I need you. Can you jump on? And he sprung into action. So I appreciate that short notice and John coming on. I think I'm going to start a show called the Brian Reynolds Live Show or something like that, where anything can happen at any time. I could call you up. Anytime I call you up, be aware you may be listened to by a live audience. I don't know. That sounds fun. Craig Morley is with us. And Craig, you and I've talked about the topic we're about to talk to about in a minute for a while now. But anyway, let everybody know who you are and what it is you do, my friend.
Well, Brian, I'm just a lowly real estate appraiser working in Utah, Arizona, and Nevada. And I am sad to say that I had to relinquish my position as president of NAA into your more than capable hands to be able to fill a term on the Appraisal Standards Board where that appointment happened a week or two ago. So that's, I'm headed down to northern Arizona to go look at some property as soon as we're done here.
Great, great. Well, yes, Craig has been appointed to the Appraiser Standards Board, and congratulations for that, Craig. That's awesome.
Yes.
You got a good guy coming on board and good for the profession. And I appreciate that. And thank you for your service to NAA. Hate to lose you. We're not losing you. You just, you're kind of kind of moving down as far as presidency. And thank you. I'm honored to take those reins. It's big shoes I got to fill, but we'll do the best we can. And then finally, last but not least, Mr. John Dingman. John.
Hey, Brian. Certified residential appraiser. I am the chief appraiser at Class Valuation, continuing education instructor. Your friend, and I know you were talking about me when you were talking about the ugly one.
And then finally, I said finally, and I lied. We got another finally. We got a little fly on the wall. Hey, fly, tell everybody who you are.
Hey, thanks, Brian. My name is Ben Maxwell. I'm the education director for Appraiser eLearning. I spent a lot of time trying to keep Brian Reynolds in line, and it's a full-time job. So thank you all for listening.
Thanks, Ben, for being here. Appreciate it. Okay, gang. So let's let the listener or the viewer in this case know what in the world we're talking about and why we're here today. It's a little thing called PAREA. My last podcast, we talked about it. I had Mr. Mike Brunson on. We kind of gave an overview of what PAREA was and et cetera, and that the AQB was going to have a meeting today, Friday, and we've all come together really pretty much right after that meeting. So John, you probably were involved with that a lot, John Brennan being on the Appraisal Foundation for a while. And so can you just give a real quick recap of what is the intent of PAREA? And you're muted, so be sure you unmute yourself. But if you could just give our listeners an overview real quickly of how did this idea come to be? And now, you know, we're going to let our listeners know it's kind of the law of the land now, I guess. But tell everybody what the concept is.
Yeah, sure. Be happy to. And yeah, I did have a lot of involvement in it when the first several years that it was being worked on. Quite simply, Brian, it's the common problem that all of us, including I'm sure all of your listeners, have heard or experienced, and that is it's designed to address the problem with those trainees and others who want to become appraisers, want to join the appraisal profession, and have run into the roadblock of not being able to find a supervisory appraiser that is willing to take them on and train them and be able to, we've heard a lot of the reasons why supervisors don't want to do that, and there are some very valid ones, all the way from, it's taking my time and money, and ultimately you're going to go into competition against me. Again, these are very valid things. Keep in mind that this current trainee mentor model has been around since the early 30s with the appraisal professional societies. And because the way the market has changed, I think there's many people, my friend Craig and others here are have probably got their appraisal experience the way I did. I happen to have a savings and loan pull me in and say, we'd like you to be an appraiser. And I said, a what? And
how do you spell that, by the way?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And thankfully, they trained me from the ground up. They encouraged me to take professional education. I had mentorship all the way through my training. But quite, the stark reality today is that not only do those opportunities not exist in current financial institutions and other places, some of those institutions don't exist. Right. And so it's fallen on the backs of the independent fee appraisers to do that training. And I just talked about the reasons why. So the idea behind PAREA is, how about looking at a way to incorporate technology today and be able to offer an alternative, not a replacement for the current experience model, that still will exist, but an alternative to that for those who would otherwise be qualified and could become great appraisers in our profession, but for lack of having that ability to get the experience to join it.
Yeah. So I teach some qualifying education as well. And I had a student in my class. It may have been the 15-hour, national USPEP course. I'm really not sure which it was, but this was a gentleman that was taking the qualifying education to meet that requirement. And he was having a hard time. He said, Brian, I called 83 appraisers, 83 before he found one willing to even talk to him about taking him on as a trainee. So, John Dingman, I want to make sure I understand what John Brennan just said. PAREA being an alternate path, an alternate course of action to become an appraiser. Are you telling me that Ben Maxwell, our little fly here today, who wants me to bring him on as a trainee, and I don't want anything to do with him as far as a trainee supervisor relationship? I'm just kidding. But are you telling me that Ben Maxwell now could have an alternative path to become a certified residential appraiser without ever having had a supervisor?
Yes. Well, provided the state allows it.
I was about to say, could you just give me the short answer?
It's a minimum requirement, right? Which I think is smart of the standards board to go that route. Allow the states to make it. I thought the responses by the board were also appropriate in that, look, if you minimize, right, lower it to 75%, whatever the percentage is, doesn't solve the problem. If the trainee was looking for a supervisor before, what do they do after? And the expense is going to be exponentially higher, right? I think it's a great opportunity for also consistency amongst, for training. I know John's a former regulator. Craig, you served on a board. I attend ARROW meetings and hear from investigators and the regulators. It's a struggle sometimes when somebody finishes their entire training opportunity with a supervisor in the traditional mentor path, and they were not trained well.
That's
yeah. Wouldn't that be horrible? You finally get your appraisal certification and you have it in hand and you start soliciting work, and most people can get a driver's license. They can study the book, they can try and figure it out, and maybe even navigate and pass the exam to be issued their driver's license. That doesn't automatically make them a good driver, does it? So God forbid, you get a horrible supervisor and you get that certification, you go out and you start appraising, and then bam, 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 you got 5 complaints against you. And you've got to now answer for those. And you're like, well, this is what my supervisor told me to do. That's not going to cut it. You're in trouble now. So maybe that minimizes some of that. I don't know. Melissa, what are your thoughts on this? You're a boots on the ground practicing appraiser. You're out there all the time. What do you think about this PAREA thing?
Well, personally, I think PAREA is going to open the doors that we need open.
Okay.
I think that it is difficult, and I will tell you, I'm in Mississippi, as you know, and I work all the time putting together supervisors and trainees. I have folks that will call me, let me know they're ready to be a trainee, and I put them together because it's that difficult to find someone. Sometimes a trainee has to relocate, and I tell them that you need to be willing to relocate, but I may be able to place you somewhere. So I've been instrumental in placing those. I'll also tell you from a state investigator's standpoint, you are so correct. I have dealt with some that their only response for some very deficient work was my supervisor told me this is how it's done.
No.
And that's really such a disservice. And, yet here the trainee is left before a state licensing board because of some of the deficient work that they're doing, when I think PAREA, and I just think we needed this a long time back. I'm so thankful we have it now. But I think PAREA is going to solve some of those problems that we have with trainees. They can gain a broader base of experience by doing the PAREA program than if they were to take on a supervisor was to take them on in, say, a very small rural community that they have no idea how to do a condo appraisal report. PAREA is going to take care of that. So, Brian, I am thrilled to see that this is moving forward, and I just hope that the states acclimate to it, accept it, even if, maybe they have to wine and dine them just a little bit. I'm just looking forward to this being a full path that's going to bust open the doors of our profession that we need.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to you, Brennan, in just a second. Craig, I'm coming to you next, but I want to say something real quick. I've had mixed feelings, and believe me, I love the idea of an alternative path. And Craig and I are going to get into this in just a second, because he had some ideas that I think were actually admirable. But one of the things I've said is they stole this from me, and that's not really true. But I've been saying for years, wouldn't it be really cool? I mean, wouldn't it be really cool if I said, hey, tomorrow when we start class, here's what we're going to do. We're going to meet at the classroom. We're going to talk about appraisal theory, right? We'll talk about real property versus real estate. We'll talk about the bundle of rights, and we'll talk about just some of this stuff in theory. But Tuesday when you come to class, wear old clothes, because when you get here, I've got a bus out front. We're all going to load up on the bus. We're going to go down the street, and we're going to go look at a house together through the eyes of an appraiser. We're going to measure it. You're going to have to crawl through the bushes on that one side, right? Get a sticker in you. And we're going to go up in the attic, and we're going to look at double hung windows versus single hung windows versus, whatever. And then we're going to come back to the classroom the following day, and we're going to do our highest and best use analysis. Then we're going to look at sales and filter them down to comparable sales. Then we're going to talk about how to support your adjustments, right? By the last day of class, each one of you will have not only looked at that property, analyzed the characteristics of the property, and as the sales, verified the data, made your appropriate adjustments, did the reconciliation, you wrote the report. By the time you left here, you've all written an appraisal report for a refinance on a single family home. And next month, we're going to do it again for a manufactured home. And the next month, we're going to do it again for a skilled nursing facility, or a mini storage facility, or a C-store. I mean, wouldn't that be a great class? And anytime I use this as an example, my audience says, hey, sign me up for that class. They're intrigued by that. Craig Morley, you wrote a letter, and I got my eyes on it, and I kind of liked what you had to say in your letter. And I tried to bring that up in the meeting today, and they didn't really answer it the way I hoped they would. But tell my listeners what kind of your thoughts were with this PAREA thing. I think your idea was to maybe ease into it, right? Maybe stick your big toe in the water and see how it works. So tell my listeners what kind of your idea behind this was.
So Brian, in the state that I'm licensed in, we have the license credential as a stepping stone before you get your either certified residential or certified general certification. And the reason why is back when I was on the appraisal board, we would find people who would start out as a trainee. They would work with their trainer for the required time period. They would submit their work experience and all their logs, that take all their classes. And in Utah, you can't take your test until you've, first of all, got your experience approved, and that you've got all your qualifying education done, and then you go take the test and you get your credential. And we were finding so many people who would invest so much time trying to get to that point where they could go get credentialed with the certification, only to find out they had a crappy trainer. Yeah. And they would waste a bunch of time, trying to get to that point. We had one young guy, bright young guy, working with a designated appraiser, doing all kinds of commercial work, and they didn't have one single appraisal that they had submitted for experience that recognized the trainee in that work product. And they had to deny all of his work experience.
Right.
And so our thinking is perhaps we have in the PAREA model, we get that person to where they actually get a credential as a licensed appraiser. At that point, they can actually do appraisal work. They can sign the report. As a regulator, the problem we always had with experience reviews is that you never knew how much of the work was the trainee and how much of it was the supervisor. Frankly, it should have been the supervisor, and you didn't really know how well qualified the trainee was. And so This seemed like to me, if we're going to adopt a method for trying to provide an alternative track until we know how well the PAREA model is going to work, let's get them to be a licensed appraiser. It's not all states recognize licensed appraisers, and I think that that may be one of the reasons why that hasn't maybe gotten the traction across the board. But I think if they had that as an option, then you can get the remaining qualifying education, you can get the remaining practical experience. And frankly, if somebody gives me a call and says, hey, I'm a licensed appraiser, could you put me to work? I'm far more interested in taking that person and helping them through that last step. And as a licensed appraiser, I can put them into work doing commercial work. I can have them do residential work. With commercial, they're still going to have a supervisor review the work and sign, because they can't sign without that, they can't sign it independently. But that was kind of my thinking, just having had a little practical experience with dealing with these trainees coming through the system.
Yeah, and I want to remind our listeners that the AQB is establishing the minimum, right? This is the minimum. So as Craig said a moment ago, states and your states, right? The states have the ability to require more than what the AQB is requiring. And it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out. You know, in Kentucky requires a little bit more to get your trainee license. We don't call it trainee here. We call it an associate license. Same thing, right? But in a lot of states, it's principles, procedures, and the 15-hour USPEP, and now a supervisor trainee class, right? That's it. Boom, you're a trainee. In Kentucky, they say, we want you to have an additional course, and the additional course is on highest and best use. So if you want to become a trainee in Kentucky, you've got an extra step to go beyond what the minimum requirement of AQB is. John Brennan, I believe, now I literally stepped out of the room and stepped back, and they said, unanimous. I also ran to get something to eat, and I guess when I was down, they talked about the grants, and then dumb me ask about grants, right? So that's what you get when you step away. You miss out on stuff. So I'm assuming when I walked right in at the tail and they said unanimous, I assume that means it passed. Okay, he's shaking his head. For you listeners, not viewers. So let me ask you a question, John Brennan. So it's here. It's official now. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet, but it's here. Let me ask you a question. You know, we've been talking about this will be a great alternative for the new folks coming in. What about, just imagine for a moment, if somebody falls into this category like some of us have talked about. You know, I'm an appraiser. I've been an appraiser for 2 years, and gosh, maybe I did have one of those bad supervisors. I didn't know it, but now I'm rethinking this, right? Wouldn't it be cool if one of those individuals, if they just elected to go through the PAREA program just for educational purposes, had that as an option? And or if an appraiser is found deficient by a regulatory board and they're being disciplined, could that also be a way to meet a disciplinary requirement of going through PAREA? Does this open the door for some of these other areas as opposed to just bringing the new people in? What do you think?
Yeah, I think great questions, and just a few things, and I know we don't have a lot of time here, but it was adopted and it's effective January 1st, 2021. So at that point, they can begin considering applications for the programs. The second thing I wanted to mention is you had prefaced your question to my friend Mr. Dingman with, you know, can I now get experience without any supervisor at all? And technically, yes, there's not a supervisor in terms of the current trainee supervisor model, but throughout the PAREA requirement, mentors, you got it. Brian just held up the
you're reading my mind. How do you do that? You know, that was going to be my very next question, was about mentors, and he steals my thunder. But go ahead, John, since you've done it.
And those mentors, the participant is required at several points through the program, if you look at the exposure draft, to actually sit down with those mentors, go through what they've learned, and those mentors are required to have the same experience and the same qualifications as a supervisory appraiser. So it's not just somebody that can fill in at some place and say, oh yeah, I'm mentoring you. Now to your last question is, absolutely, there are some incredible opportunities here for appraisers that may not have had the type of training that they feel that they want. At some point, right now, the PAREA program is developed in one big chunk, but there are possibilities that they could maybe segregate some of those out. So an appraiser who may not be up to speed on highest and best use might be able to sign up for a module on just highest and best use and get that type of training that they really want. Likewise, when this was first being talked about, there were many states who said, we would be interested in an opportunity to use this as a remedial tool for disciplinary cases where they found certain lack of training and supervision in one area of appraisal. So I think all those things are on the horizon as this continues to evolve, and you'll probably be seeing it sooner rather than later.
Great. On the mentor thing, I know you said you've got to have the same qualifications as being technically a supervisor now, right? But could I like today say, hey, I'm a mentor? Or is there going to be, I mean, I know I could say a mentor, I'm a mentor, but can I say that I'm a mentor for the AQB PAREA program? What does it take to say I'm officially a mentor that is recognized by PAREA?
So they're not actually going to have a designation for mentors like you have for a supervising appraiser. It's not an AQB thing. What it will be is those entities that develop PAREA training programs will have their own mentor or mentors for their programs, and they just must ensure that those mentors meet those minimum qualifications that the AQB is set for.
And they may require something in addition to that to be on their list. We don't know what that's going to look like, right? And they may just not want me on their list anyway. I don't know. We'll see. Guys, we're out of time. Thank you very much for being here today. And I want to bring all y'all back. This is kind of a hot topic, and it just passed today. And so that's why I wanted you on. But it's going to continue to unfold and come out of the box. And we're going to see how this thing shapes and bends and folds and whatnot. But thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Brian Reynolds, your host. For Melissa, John, Craig, and a little fly Ben, thank you very much for being here today. Be safe, be careful, and we'll see you again real soon.